All right, we are live here. Welcome everybody to the weekly Pond webinar where we talk all things most pressing issues in the nonprofit space. For introductions, my name is Mitch Stein. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Pond and joinpond.com. We are a platform for nonprofits seeking any kind of vendor or resource to level up their impact and their mission. So if you need a new consultant, a piece of technology, we're the place where you can list those needs. You get responses from vendors in our community directly on platform and earn money to spend on those resources as you engage with the platform. So we'd love to have more of you there. If you attend this webinar and give us feedback at the end, you actually get a credit directly into your account to start building up that balance. So make sure that you fill out our survey at the end and make sure you get the credit for being here. But we are not here today to hear from me or hear about Pond. We are here to hear from some really amazing experts in the fundraising and we'll say politicized cause area space. And so we'll start off with introductions from Elizabeth and Connie. If you want to start off by just sharing, who you are, what your current role is, and if you don't mind, just a few layers of your identity that you bring into the conversation today. Elizabeth, do you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Haranis. I am the Director of Institutional Giving at Planned Parenthood League of Massachusetts. We are an affiliate of the larger Planned Parenthood. There are, I believe, 40-something of us, and we are serving people who are living in Massachusetts. I come from a long history of fundraising. In the past, I worked for an LGBTQ advocacy organization called Family Equality Council. So that was really my first dip into causes that can be construed as controversial. I'm really happy to be here. I was just telling Mitch and Connie that my first week at Planned Parenthood was the week that SB 8 was passed in Texas. So it's been a little tumultuous, but nonetheless, working with amazing people has been incredibly inspiring.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Excited to have you here today. Connie, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Connie Heflin. I am the Executive Director of SuperShot. And SuperShot is a Fort Wayne, Indiana-based local nonprofit that provides immunizations primarily to children. And I, like I said, am the Executive Director, and we're a small organization, so I do all the fundraising as well. But our mission is to make sure everybody in our community has access to immunizations, and vaccines and immunizations have, because of everything COVID, really been pulled into the mainstream media and have been politicized recently. So it's taken a different turn, and we've experienced just some different feedback because of how political vaccines have become.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Connie, for that. And I'm excited to hear, as you can see, this is going to be a real candid conversation, stuff that maybe doesn't get publicized as often, these challenges that are real and we're facing on the ground. And we'll have one more joiner on the conversation here in a few minutes, but I'd love to start off. You both mentioned some of the hardship that has occurred in your jobs recently. Maybe Elizabeth, if you just want to talk through how you feel like your cause area that you're working on has become more politicized or more controversial, and how that impacts your day-to-day work.
Absolutely. I mean, the most obvious answer to your question is that abortion is about to be rescinded in many, many states. It's something that we just know is going to happen. Roe versus Wade is going to get overturned. And it's something that the political right has been working toward for 50 years. It is complicated, obviously, especially working with our other affiliates. So one of the things that I think really affects my job is understanding where our place is in Massachusetts versus some of our other affiliates' places. A big question that we ask now is something appropriate for us to apply for? Or is it more appropriate for our colleagues in Missouri or Kentucky to be applying for that. So that's actually something that's really nuanced that I think that is probably super unique to Planned Parenthood, but also, you can get into like mission creep or appropriateness. The other issues that we face in terms of being politicized is we have, hi, Aaron. Sorry. But the other thing that we do face is the increasing politicization of transgender care. So sometimes we'll get pledge cards in the mail that like have handwritten on them, "This is for women's health," with it like super underlined. And that's something that you have to ignore, but that we never back down from.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing more of that. And want to dig in to some of the impacts of those things for sure. I just want to make sure now that we've got Aaron on too. Aaron, we were just going through introductions. And so would love to just have you introduce yourself, your current role, and then share a little bit about how the kind of polarization in society and politicization of your cause has an impact on your day-to-day work too.
So I'm Erin Dale Mcclellan. I'm the executive director of the Partnership Funds, which is a national fund focused on building independent political power in a set of states. And I'm also the chair or the board president of Fertile Ground Food Cooperative, which is an effort to start a community-owned grocery store and cultural center in Southeast Raleigh. On the question of politicizing our issues, I want to say that I feel like the process of politicizing our basic human needs, air, water, medical care, is really a product of white supremacy culture and capitalism and other oppressive forces pushing down on us to limit what our options are as it relates to what's possible in the world. And so the idea that, for instance, clean air and water is a Democrat's issue, well, that's a lie, because everybody wants to have clean air and clean water. And so feeding into the allowing those issues to become politicized, which I think is backed by the IRS and nonprofit status. And sometimes when we're lobbying, what's considered, say, inappropriate or what's considered political lobbying, that really challenges all of our work to improve the conditions for everyday humans. And we got to I push back against that all the time on any front, because it's very harmful to, what we need as people on the planet, like, and really thinking about that, the idea that, say, increasing wages is a political issue, cleaning our water. It's really harmful. Yeah, and I think that it's a setback for all of us to continue to feed into it.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. We'll definitely want to dig into some of that more here. I just want to round out with Connie. If you mentioned some of the challenges of running a vaccine and immunization nonprofit in the past 2 years. Would just love to hear you share a little bit more about how that's really changed. Like, what was the status quo 3 years ago when you were fundraising and running SuperShot versus some of your experience today?
Sorry, it's muted. We should know that by now. Well, because immunizations have become almost a right or left issue, it's made me do a lot more homework before I approach potentially a funder, to understand potentially where they sit. I was, before the podcast began, I shared an example where, so we're all about keeping kids healthy, and all of the health disparities out there and inequities. We provide immunizations to children regardless of the ability to pay. It's the most effective way to keep kids healthy. And we're breaking down those barriers. So in my mind, I can't understand, just like you said, how this becomes a right or left issue. It's about human rights and having access to healthcare, because healthcare, your access is determined by your zip code, your skin color, and the type of insurance you have. So, I was really taken back. Just last week, I asked a local sports club to just take pictures with kids and to help incent them to come out. And they wouldn't come out and do that because they didn't want to get caught in the crossfires of immunizations, and specifically the social media backlash that they could face, not just locally, but potentially from across the country. So it has just impacted how don't you look at donors and having to respect that. I was thankful they gave me that honest feedback. Like you said, knowing where they stand and why is a gift. But it's just made me very much more aware that it's just not, there's more to it. There's a lot more nuances to certain donors and why they will or won't put their name on something. And it's unfortunate, but that's now where the realm we're living in.
Yeah. And I'd love to get into, especially on the fundraising front, Elizabeth, and you've mentioned that you've been at a few different cause areas. How does it change your approach to fundraising, knowing that you are talking about a topic that's going to be charged for people?
I think it's actually made me a little more bold. I don't shy away from talking about abortion with anybody. It's even, foundations that are supporting Planned Parenthood's educational programs. We're very upfront about the fact that we are an abortion provider. I know that a lot of folks say like 90% of the thing is preventative, blah, 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 but it's really important to put this at the forefront because it is political and we are a political organization, essentially, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Aaron, how does that affect, as you mentioned, there's kind of some politicization of things that are human rights that doesn't seem justified. How does that affect your approach to donors and funders in working with your organization?
I think that I'm spending more time looking for co-conspirators. And I am looking for folks who share our values and putting out front our values, our ways of being. For instance, our values of the Partnership Fund are community, nature, and self-determination. And so my work now is to identify funders and donors who care about community, nature, and self-determination, and building the beloved community and sharing power and decision-making. We call it co-creative grant-making, who want to be in relationship with organizations on the front line and learn together. And I know those people are out there. They don't know me yet, So I need to work very hard to get our vision out, our story out, to draw towards us folks who are really trying to walk into a new paradigm and leave this waning paradigm in the past. So it encourages me to really work harder to identify folks who are on the same page with us instead of trying to bring people who are not on the same page over to our strategy. And really know that if folks knew that we were out here doing the work that we were doing in the way that they were doing, they want to be a part of what I'm doing. Because the conditions that our movement are in, or the conditions that our communities are in right now, are very, very bad. Right? And if we continue to do things the same way, they will continue to get worse. They won't get better. So you can't continue to do things in a bad way and then expect that good is going to come from that. And so that's the one strategy that I'm advancing. The second strategy is to just continue to try to raise the vibration in how I communicate with people. So, for instance, clean air, clean water, and body autonomy, these are not politicized issues. These are human issues. We've politicized them so that some people can make money off the pain of other people. That's why they're politicized, right? And so what we want to do is, what I want to do is to talk about it just like I'm talking to you right now, and know that not everybody's going to agree with me, but some people in their heart, they know that they're like, oh yeah, you know what? That's right. Let me think about that. Why do we politicize clean air when I really like clean water? I cleaned my burger the other day. I want clean water. I don't want poison in my water. I don't want toxins in my water. And I don't want it in your water either. We all have a right to a certain set of conditions where we can prosper and be safe. I don't want safety for me, and I don't want it for you, because then neither of us are safe. We are. And really to be a person generating that energy, that vibration, and that message, and have our foundation generated as well, because that's the way to the new paradigm. And so that's my approach. My approach is, one, identify co-conspirators, identify and build with co-conspirators, which takes more time. In the past, I might have tried to communicate in a way that would have brought anybody to the table with me. But then when they get to the table and they disagree, it slows down your work to get ahead, right? Because you're then dealing internal conflicts with people who don't share the same set of values. And I find that not to work for where I'm trying to go with my work. So identifying co-conspirators, building in alignment and in relationship with co-conspirators, and then speaking at a higher vibration that I hope lifts the vibration of our work overall and draws more people who right now don't know if they agree with me, but once you hear and you talk and we build together, you'll see, like, I want the same thing for my family that you want for yours. We might see things a little bit differently, but talking together is how we're going to build sort of the common way forward. And that takes time, It does take more time. And I think it slows down my fundraising. Whereas maybe I might have moved faster if I tried a different way, but I've tried those other ways in the past and they didn't work for me or for the work I'm trying to do. And so this way is how I'm moving now.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that, Erin. I think it's a hard reality that it might require some patience or slower progress when we're all in this work, because we really want to see change, right? We all have urgency of what we're doing. Connie, I'd love to hear how your approach to fundraising has had to evolve with maybe more heated discussions with funders or donors. Like, how has that changed your approach?
Well, and I think you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to what you believe. But I also, and I'm here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's a small community, and being respectful, listening. I try to listen more than talk, and really try to understand the why behind, the person I'm talking to, where they're coming from, because I feel like the more you can understand, the more you can continue, just like Erin said, have these meaningful conversation and come to some middle ground. Maybe we don't all agree on COVID vaccines, but I think we could agree that there are a lot of immunizations that children get for school that create a healthy environment for children to go to school and learn and be productive, and and vaccines not only protect the individual, they keep our entire community healthy. So I think it's, sorry to digress, but it's just really working to have meaningful conversations. It's more mission driven. It's about, trying to address health disparities and inequities to healthcare in our community, and making sure everybody has equal access to resources. So it's talking about the bigger issue, the bigger impact that we're having on health disparities in the community, rather than trying to get into, if you believe, some wild conspiracy about the COVID vaccine. So I try to get it on a bigger issue on how what we're doing here really helps our entire community, and especially the most marginalized children in our community.
Yeah,
But it's listening. Sorry. Yeah. It's trying to listen. And even when they said, they wouldn't come and make appearances with kids, kicking a soccer ball around, I just had to listen. My personal approach is to, to listen and try to understand and try to, because they were honest, they told me they believed in vaccines themselves, to try to, I'm joking, continue that conversation. And, maybe not this time, but maybe as your sports club becomes more established, maybe an appearance down the road would make sense, because they have a huge draw with the Latino population in our community.
Yeah, I mean, what I've heard a lot from both you and Aaron is, if there's something about your cause that is the hot button, like, is there a way to refocus attention on the bigger issue at hand, or the bigger thing we can all agree on? In some of these instances where that makes sense, to like, let's not get distracted by this bigger headline that's kind of like taking up a lot of air in the room, when let's focus on the work that's being done. And I just think that's really powerful. Another thing that's come up a lot is just identifying who your people are, right? Like, spend the time with the people that are going to support you. Elizabeth, I'd love to hear how, like, on the ground in the work you're doing, how do you find the right match? Like, how do you find the people that are worth pouring into from a fundraising perspective and supporter perspective for your organization?
That's a great question. And something that Aaron actually said really like pinged in my brain is that when you're working in a field that is considered controversial, you really find folks who are willing to invest, and it's less of a transactional relationship. So I've worked for organizations where we, get event sponsorships, and it's very like NASCAR, like slapping a logo onto an event to get good press. And, like, for better or for worse, Planned Parenthood rarely gets corporate sponsorships. But that does open up an opportunity wherein we find folks who are passionate about our causes, who are passionate about health disparities, like Connie was discussing, and who are passionate about ensuring the right to choose. And so digging in and, building those relationships is more important than an event sponsorship at the end of the day. I mean, frankly, I'm lucky enough to be Planned Parenthood. So oftentimes people will find us, I mean, we were all like super shocked. Everybody was so upset when the SCOTUS leak happened a couple of weeks ago. But I can tell you that the outpouring of support from our community was something that actually made me feel dizzy. I was just so like, my stomach like leapt up into my throat. I started crying a little. I mean, it was, crying probably for like stress reasons, but it was really beautiful to see folks come out and support us at a time where we definitely needed it.
Yeah, and I think something you're touching on too, Elizabeth, and Aaron, I'd love your take on, is actually it can be an asset to be doing something that is deemed controversial, because that means people care a lot about it. How do you action that, the recognition that like what we're doing actually is an asset? I don't need to shy away from this topic because I'm going to find my biggest supporters, or we're going to bring supporters to us when controversy arises. So almost like making lemonade out of the lemons of a controversy.
The thing I like to think about, what you just actually brought to mind, is that we're trying to save lives. And that's what all of us on this call are actually doing. We are saving human beings' lives through our work. And I don't actually think it's controversial. I think that the reason that it's deemed controversial is because somebody is benefiting, again, like I said earlier, from the pain of others. So they have to make it controversial so they can make it unaccessible. If it was accessible to all of us, then their political aims would be more difficult to meet. Somebody is profiting from our pain. And that's why it's controversial. And so I like to remind everybody of that. I did a study one time, and it talked about how the oppressions that are on us set up a system so that we're sort of in a box and we can't envision a way out, another way. So even our solutions are sort of within this box of, what exists right now, instead of, say, being able to vision outside, because what's in the box, achieving what's in the box seems impossible. So then how can we even get beyond that? But the people deserve beyond that. And I think about that a lot. My people deserve better. We deserve more than this. So we have to ask, who is benefiting from allowing these systems to be set up that way and then making them controversial and politicized so that our goals are more difficult to meet? And somebody is making money off of it. I was kind of trained to think that, who's making money from your pain? Who's making money from your pain, and how are they benefiting from it? And studying that so that you can then kind of break it down and then build a new way and kind of call people into belonging. Because I think that's the other thing. It's this individualism that says you're on your own, I'm on my own. Or that says, if you make it, I won't make it, so I got to get it from you. Or, one of us can't benefit because it's going to be taking, instead of the abundance. It's like a scarcity mindset in a box over an abundance framework in an open field, like to try to actually keep us in this box. And so I continue to challenge it, because the abundance framework, the abundance mindset, like it really, there is enough for every single one of us. There is, and I feel like we need to work on shifting our culture as a country to make that more possible for people to actually then sort of exist in it because they've experienced it or seen it. Now that's how I kind of address it in myself and address it when I speak publicly. And then in my work at our fund, raise the values and name the values like I've named them so that people can be drawn into reframing how we're even seeing what we're up against.
Yeah, a lot of what you just shared, Erin, I think are great antidotes to hesitation. Because I think a lot of times, most people don't like conflict. They're like, especially if you're working in the nonprofit space, you're probably like, you're geared to help others and you're geared to please people. It just is like, I'm making generalizations, but I see a lot of that in the community. And I think there needs to be this, like, how do I get past the hesitation to remember the power of what I'm doing and what our organization is doing and what our community is doing. Connie, I know that you've had to have a lot of those uncomfortable conversations with people whose mindsets are shifted or are, coming to you with what to be not true or kind of even harmful to the community in terms of their perspectives. How do you approach those tough conversations? And when do you decide whether it's worth swaying or convincing or letting it go?
And like I said before, my approach is a lot of listening, and I again go back to the greater good of what we're doing and the cause, and try to help. And I'm not, if you can sense it, you can sense, like Erin said, Elizabeth said, if somebody is just not on the same page, it's slowing you down. Just respectfully, disagree and move on and find your people, find the people that believe in your cause and the work that you're doing and, the good you're trying to make in your community. So I'm not a somebody that thinks I'm going to change somebody's mind by, keep going at it. It's not my approach. And I think your time is better spent finding people that, that do agree with you, because they are going to be a lot more passionate about it. And when you said making, lemonade out of lemons, the COVID pandemic was huge for SuperShot. We ended up being able to fundraise during the pandemic to establish a permanent home for our organization. We'd never had our own building. Now we have a permanent home, and it really did energize people who understood the benefit of immunizations and public health. And it did help our agency, and it brought more attention just to the immunization, realm, and what immunizations do to protect all of us. So for something political, like you said, you have passionate cheerleaders on the other side too. And it's fine. And like Elizabeth said, she was overwhelmed by the kindness and support of people. And so I think life, just focus on finding people rather than trying to convince people that are never going to come around. That's just going to bring you down, make you feel bad, and make you frustrated. We just continue to keep moving forward and finding your tribe.
Yeah. I just want to, and for folks dropping comments, there's some great stuff in the chat. So please keep sharing your thoughts there. I just wanted to, and someone I know asked, if this webinar be recorded. Yes, this will stay on our LinkedIn page on YouTube. So Jordan, this will definitely be available to share with your team. Aaron, this question just came up directly for you from Justin in the audience, asking about this juxtaposition of preaching to the choir and offering appeal to the identity of the masses, maybe not on board. I guess, how do you learn to live and present from an abundance framework with those two poles on directions that you can take, and deconstructing that illusion of scarcity for people, both to your supporters and hopefully to a broader audience?
Wow. So my background is getting people out to vote. So I worked in an organization for a very, very long time, over a decade. And one of the things I learned there is that people need to hear something about 14 times. So that preaching, and also I learned that people are bifurcated, which means that not everybody is all conservative or all liberal, I guess, that I'll use in that frame. So that there are conservatives that care about the environment. There are sort of liberals that might not support church. It's really not as cut and dry as we're kind of taught to believe, I guess. And so my understanding is that there is a small group of people like me, tree hugging revolutionaries, want everybody to be happy. I love you, abundance. There's enough for everybody. Can we share? And then there are other people on the complete opposite side of me in that bell curve. And then all these other people are in the middle. And they may have different opinions about different things. And so that preaching to the choir is a tiny bit of people. I'm really trying to talk to the people that are on my side and in the middle, and trying to bring more people that are in the middle, so they may undecided or whatever, over to my way. And maybe they might not agree with me the first time they hear me, but the 15th time that they hear me, and then other people are also generating the same positive vibration, positive message. And the core of that message is solidarity. So when I talk about the abundance framework, and I say I versus I and we, I am, we are, I'm talking about a solidarity, sort of a united framework in my messaging overall that grounds everything that I am saying. And what that's speaking to is that division is actually the bane of human existence. And then being together and belonging is the way forward for all of us. So this is the core of the message that's underneath what I'm saying. And I'm just trying to generate that over and over and over and over to draw more people to the abundance. Not necessarily, again, the folks that are extreme, that I know I won't be able to move, that I know hate that I exist, frankly, and that would like to see me completely disappear, and everybody that looks like me. So I'm not trying to get those people. I'm trying to get the people that are in the middle, and that are like on my side to walk in a direction of abundance and I would say beloved community and reconciliation. So I hope that answers the question. So underneath, what am I saying? Down bottom, my is that then more people will join over time. We actually is that generating that vibration and that energy, it'll draw more resources to our side, which is basically this idea that I am and we are absolutely connected. And if I'm hurting, you are hurting. And if I don't have, say, bodily autonomy, you don't have it either. You know, like to really generate this new way for our entire country, frankly, at this point in time. And again, you know, lives are on the line now. And we've seen that in the last couple, like literally on the line, because we don't know how to be together. I hope that answers that question that I was asking.
Yeah, Justin thanked you in the chat here. So thank you so much. And a lot of what you were saying of and I know Patrick mentioned this too, this sort of landscape, understanding what the potential supporter or detractor kind of audience looks like. Elizabeth, I would love to hear how you think about even engaging supporters in the work with you, like how knowing that what you do might polarize people, how can you get the most out of, or I guess like arm and instruct your supporters to be helping in the work that you're doing? Like what would your message be to your biggest supporters?
Well, thanks. And Erin, you are just like pushing all my happy buttons today. Like, thank you for that. You know, one of the things that Planned Parenthood has done over the past few years is reconcile with our extremely problematic founder, our history of systemic racism, and our failures to the BIPOC community. That is a message that some of our donors have a problem with, frankly. Some of our donors, especially those who are, you know, okay, this is a cool space, so I'm just going to say it, like the rich white people who, you know, have given, you know, $25,000 to us for 30 years or something, they don't like that message. But it's something that we can't back away from. It's something that we have to continue to reconcile with. And it's something that we need to bring them along with us. This is not something that we are capitulating. You know, we don't shy away from challenging our donors. You know, for example, I had a donor who pushed back against an instance where we identified systemic racism within the healthcare community in Worcester, Massachusetts. And he said, you know, like, that's not racism, that's religion. And, you know, we took a step back, developed some resources to supply him with, studies, polls, things like that, and presented it to him in a way where we didn't back down. And I'm really proud of that, but it's also something that has caused tension in some communities. But I think that if you really want to walk the walk, you can't capitulate to your donors. Is that an unsatisfying answer?
No, that is such an important message. And some of the things you brought up are great tactics too, right? It's not just saying, no, you're wrong. You listened, you had resources, you came, you know, well prepared for knowing what was going to be a difficult conversation. And I think that's what's important.
And one of the things that I had to do personally was to recognize that it was not ill-intentioned, that this is not language that this donor in particular was comfortable with, because it was the first time. People don't like to admit that they don't know stuff. So
that is a really powerful and important statement. I think, because we all forget when we're closest to an issue that we're familiar with language or we're comfortable with certain topics. And oftentimes you have to meet people where they are, just because the language can be off-putting or divisive if you're not familiar. And that's so right. No one likes to be put in that position where they feel like it was like a gotcha moment, or they feel dumb. And how can you respectfully move them along that education process?
Yeah, it's a real slippery slope sometimes.
Yeah. One of the questions that just came up in the chat from Dan here, and Connie, I'd love your take on this. And I sort of jokingly in the description of the session talked about, when you're helping sick kids or puppies, it's pretty easy to like be amenable to everybody as a cause, but sometimes we're working on more controversial stuff. Dan runs an organization that does music programming in schools, and maybe that's an easier, happier thing for everyone to get on board with. And his question is really, how can someone like me support all of the other organizations that I work in community with, right? You're not single issue when you're, working with youth development. How can he or people like him support the organizations around him that he knows he's in community with, to help bring their audience, bring their supporters? And Connie, I know this hits home for you, where you're working with youth, but it's a specific youth topic that is maybe more controversial than others. How have your good community partners helped, especially through the last 2 years?
Wow. Community partners have been incredible for us over the last 2 years. They have been our trusted messengers. It is finding those community partners that can be your trusted messengers within their own communities. The MLK Club, the NAACP came alongside of SuperShot and said, how can we help build confidence in immunizations in our community? The Latino Chamber of Commerce. So it is, and that's such a great question, because everybody can help if you believe in it. It's just a simple thing like liking a post on social media rather than making a mean comment, or sharing it saying this is a great cause. I mean, there's so many just subtle ways that you can support a cause that carries weight to everybody around you. Just saying, I got my COVID vaccine, and being confident in that, it says you trust immunizations. So community partners, community members are and continue to be huge. And we really feel like we built the pandemic and our Super Bowl. Those relationships that we made during that are going to carry us forward and help instill confidence in immunizations moving forward, because now we know the trusted messengers within each part of our community. And when we have something going on, we can ask them to help share it with their own segment of the community. It's a great question. Everybody can help if you believe in it. Can help a cause that might be somewhat polarizing, just by simple things like liking it, on social media, or telling somebody else about it, or sharing a flyer at your nonprofit about something that's going on at the other nonprofit.
I think, just to add on to what Connie was saying, I think that Erin actually made an amazing point earlier. I think that as nonprofit fundraisers, we approach things from a scarcity mindset, and we've all been so siloed, and you're competing for the same grants all the time. And I think that we're just starting to realize how interwoven most of our work is. I can see how an organization like the question askers would be of use to Connie. I could see how that partnership would raise all boats. So I think that Erin's point to approach things from an abundance mindset is going to help us in the future.
And one small example of that, we are now distributing with another nonprofit in our community that is a local diaper bank. They participated and helped us spread the word. And we realized together there's such scarcity when it comes to diapers for young parents, and there's such a need. Now we're giving those diapers out here. And I think the more you work with other nonprofits, like you just said, Elizabeth, we're all trying to help the same communities and lift our entire community up. And it's all about collaboration, and funders love to see nonprofits collaborating. They, really will give more if they see that you're partnering with other nonprofits in your community.
So Becky just asked a question in the chat, which was literally the next thing I was going to ask. We are unsurprisingly on the exact same page, Becky. But I just want to take a few minutes here to acknowledge that while all of you are incredibly strong and clearly super committed to your cause and understand the impact you're having, it's impossible to ignore that when someone disagrees with you or is unkind to you because you're pushing something forward that not everyone agrees with, it takes a toll. And I would love to just hear from each of you, and maybe, starting with you, Aaron, how do you think about your own mental health in this work to show up the next day at your full strength and carry forward, because we all need you. Oh no, it's not Aaron. All right, Aaron will rejoin in a second. But why don't we start off with you, Connie? How do you think about your mental health day to day in this kind of work?
I try to have the attitude, of gratitude, to be thankful, to be able to give back and create a healthier community. I know that little scenario where the, football team wouldn't come out and make an appearance. And I know that sounds so small, but I just went to bed dwelling on it. I was like, this is something kids would love, and something that would bring out families. And it's just, I'm not asking for money. I'm just asking for an appearance in it. And so I literally at 2 a.m. I was like, okay, I should be thankful they had this honest conversation with me, trying to find the good in what that conversation was, trying to find the positive of, where it went or what happened. And then move on and stay true to what you believe in. I mean, I believe that vaccines save lives. I believe they make our community healthy. I think that you get a vaccine to protect somebody else. It's an altruistic action that you do for your community. And just to keep your mission in mind and know in your heart you're doing good is how I, mental health. I mean, it's not always, I literally was like awake at 2 a.m. going, man, I can't believe it. And then I found the positive in it. And I woke up the next day going, okay, there was a positive in that. So trying to find the positive in everything, because there is something. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah. Aaron, how would you answer the same question?
The self-care question. You see how I dropped off?
You needed a moment of self-care.
I've changed a lot. I think earlier in my career, I completely burned out. Totally burned out. And that had to do with the number of hours I was working and the amount of stress. In being a nonprofit leader and executive, you are the communicator, the finance officer, the human relations department, the negotiator, and you have your own work to do. And so it was a lot. So self-care for me now means a lot of succession planning, ensuring that there are other people in my organization that can be in my place if I'm not there, that I've organized the work in a way that it'll continue whether I'm there or not. That's a big part of my self-care strategy. Another thing is to rest and hydrate. And probably the most important thing is my spiritual practice. And I didn't start off by giving thanks to my ancestors and the Creator and the Great Mother Earth for taking care of me, just remembering that we are, what did the tree say about the matter? Walking the dog, getting outside, having ways of connecting with nature are very important to my self-care practices. And then I really believe that our social justice organizations and nonprofits must start to treat their workers with dignity. I don't have enough time to speak to how deeply troubling it is, how we treat workers in our movement. So as an example, we have healthcare campaigns and we ask people to go out and talk to folks in the community about healthcare, but won't provide it to the workers. They don't get sabbaticals, they don't get raises. They don't get the benefits that they deserve to do the work. And in fact, we've gotten, as a movement, I think we've gotten worse, not better, over the last decade with how we treat the actual human beings. That we ask to carry forward these strategies in our nonprofits when they're still humans. I mean, if we act like the corporate entities that we're trying to change, then we will not get where we want to be. It's a big issue to me. So then it's also thinking about organizational structure and culture and how to do our work that in a way that honors the humans. And I talk a lot about the humans because I'm trying to remind myself and others that we are actual people. We're not robots. We have families, we have troubles, we have heartache, we have joys. And I actually believe that our workplace, because it's the place that most people are spending their days, should be a place that honors that. So your children should be welcome on the Zoom. Take a moment, wave to the little child that's looking for some attention because its mother is doing all of the work or its father's doing, like, hello, little person, how are you today? It is okay to do this. And we have to kind of return to that. So there's like the organizational culture and structures need to shift to allow for people to honor their self-care. And then we have to have our personal practices because the transformation sort of starts with you. So if you are the leader, if you as the leader are not practicing self-care in your own work, then you're really damaging your organization and your staff and your community. That's not a service. You're not helping us doing this. You're really kind of replicating status quo harmful ways in our work, which then our outcomes look like what we get when our processes are inhumane in how we treat people. And then I really try to practice what I preach. I have people around me that hold me to that. I was recently chastised because I'm saying this to you all, but I work on Sundays some days, trying to get ready for Monday. And my friend was like, so it sounds to me like you're working 6 days a week. And I had to like kind of grapple with that. Like, how am I gonna organize my life in a way that I actually feel emotional about it? Organize my life in a way that I am taking care of myself in the way that I would want my community to be taken care of. It's very hard to do it. It's a daily practice. And it's an important thing that we really commit to. So I guess I'm speaking now to the audience. If you're out there and you're exhausted and depleted and hurting and grieving, because right now there's a lot of grief out there, because we as a movement have to also talk about these things. So we've seen, there's been a lot of shootings and mass murders in places, but having the stuff happen recently, like so close together during this period, I think really took people for a walk. And people are at work like crying, and people are in actually a lot of pain in their hearts. And the terror creates a feeling of helplessness, which is actually what terror is designed to do. I'm a military brat, for anybody who knows that. I have a serious military family. So I know what terror actually is designed to do in war. And we have to discuss, we're kind of in a silent war in our country that we're not talking about. So the implications of that in the work of nonprofits trying to get towards a better world, like we kind of got to speak. Somebody spoke earlier about the landscape assessment that you do when you want to lobby. It's the same thing that we as a nonprofit movement sort of have to do about the moment that we're in this country and what we're actually fighting for and what we're actually fighting against. And so the self-care part of practicing that personally, to me, is difficult and very important, and I prioritize it in all the ways that I spoke to, but it's still hard. And I just want to name that, I just want to name that for folks to know it's daily. And it's designed to be hard because of what our country is putting us through right now. This is by design. It is not an accident. So when you kind of can assess that, then you might be able to take it off of yourself. Like, you're not doing anything wrong. You showed up today. Give thanks for you showing up, And saying that to each other is really important right now because it is difficult sometimes to just get out of bed.
Yeah. Aaron, thank you so much for sharing all that. I mean, even just the moment of reflection that you're saying these things and you're not perfect. I think
Yeah.
that pursuit of perfection is just as damn, even in your own, you can't be perfect in your own self-care.
Ashe,
Um,
can I say something to just
yeah,
quickly?
of
Like,
course.
perfection is individualism, excellence is community, right? So seeking perfection does not help our people. We should be seeking collective excellence. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Thank you for all of that. And Elizabeth, I want to make sure we get over to you before we wrap up too about, because I know it has to be hard to see these kind of hateful protests happening outside of your own facilities, and Becky used the terminology emotional shrapnel getting lobbed your way. Like, how do you take care of yourself in that setting?
I mean, I would love to cuss out all of those protesters, but we're not allowed to interact. We do have amazing volunteers who escort us into the building. Um, but I think that in terms of self care, I think Aaron touched on this a little bit, but I think that it's important to set boundaries. Because we're doing work that we all believe in, that we know is critical and important, we can work. It's so easy to work until like 9 p.m. or something. But I remember being at the LGBTQ advocacy organization that I was at a few years ago. I worked all the time, and it was encroaching on my actual physical health. I was at the point where like my friends didn't want to talk to me because all I was doing was working. And so I've learned to establish boundaries. Like I live and breathe abortion care, but I also like don't answer email on the weekends. I think it's important to do things like that for yourself to prevent burnout and to prevent you from becoming a person that's unrecognizable. Like you can lose your sense of self when you're a part of a cause.
Yeah, that is so important, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing and raising that. And I know, as expected, this hour went by incredibly quickly because we have such great insight from all of you, and hard to believe we're wrapping up soon. But before we do, I'd love to get kind of a last word from each of you. Like, I just know this is an emotional topic for people, and it's clearly just from the comments like resonating with so many people in the audience that are sharing in this experience with you. I guess I'd just love to go around in a circle and just, what would your one note or piece of advice or comment be to the audience that's struggling through some of the same things you're working on? Connie, if you want to kick us off.
Just know that you're making a difference. The work you're doing is making a difference. And keep your head up and practice self-care, and and surround yourself with people that believe in the work that you're doing as well. So yeah, just believe that you're making a difference. And I think that's what we all want as humans when it's all said and done, to know that we tried to leave this place better than how we found it.
Thanks, Connie. Aaron, what would your kind of last word for folks be?
My t-shirt says breathe, and at the top it says breath is life. My Facebook page is Breath is Life. Just remind people of the power of their own breath. And everything Connie said, absolutely concur with that. Just take a breath sometimes.
Love that. And Elizabeth?
Oh, I tried to mute, but I stopped my camera. I think that, obviously Aaron and Connie are so inspirational, and I'm really grateful to have met both of you in this brief hour. But I think that, I'd encourage everybody on this call to just be brave. It's not easy. It's not going to get easier in the next few months or years. So be brave, self-care, and, don't drink too much wine at night.
Well, Thank you. As you said, Elizabeth, we're all in it for the long haul. So we got to take care of ourselves and each other. And so many amazing messages that came out of this. Just as a reminder to everybody, this is available afterwards on Pond's LinkedIn, on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. We'll also convert it into a podcast in our podcast feed, so it's super accessible to anyone. And I just have a huge thank you to everyone who joined and shared, and our speakers especially. Thank you for being so candid. And I know that it's hard to find space to do that. And I'm really grateful that you all joined us today. Just a quick reminder that please give us your feedback, our survey. We do these sessions every week, every Thursday at noon on a whole range of topics. So make sure that you give us some feedback by answering a quick survey, and we'll also give you some credit in your account on Pond to use on whatever your nonprofit needs within the Pond marketplace. So thank you all so much for joining.